Welcome to Building Stories, the podcast where we tell honest and sometimes funny stories about construction and digital transformation. And very excited to have Kristian Butcher with us today. He's the CEO and founder of BuildAI. He has a background in project engineering and project management over quite a few years, mate. So you've seen and done a lot of things. So we're really pleased to have you with us to educate us.
Thanks very much, Luke. Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Michael, also.
Yeah. Your young years, mate, were there any hints you'd be where you are right now in this industry when you were growing up?
Certainly not in technology. I definitely wasn't a kid that loved to play video games and things like that growing up. So I always gravitated towards construction, loved building things. And I think in about probably the last year or two of high school, realised I wanted to be a builder, but probably go to uni to learn how to be a builder, a manager, a construction manager. And so that sort of led me down the path of doing an engineering degree and getting into construction management straight out of school into uni.
So you went straight into it. So you're very, very deliberate about that choice. A lot of people, it kind of happens by accident.
Yeah, I think it dated all the way back to, the sort of earlier years in high school for me, where the part-time jobs were being a labourer or doing a bit of bricklaying for your footy coach and things like that. So I always had that practical exposure, didn't really do a apprenticeship in McDonald's or anything like that. And then, it just made sense to get into the construction and the building through uni and into the career.
So coming out of uni, did you have some key moments that really thought I'm on the right course here? This is it.
Well, it's interesting because at the time, I don't think I understood some of the strategic decisions I was making, but certainly looking back now, I can connect a few dots that maybe tell a bit of a story to how I ended up where I am. So I think about halfway through uni, it's very common for undergraduates to start getting interested in working for some of those big corporates, the Lend-Leases and multiplexes of the world. And they're very open to getting the uni students in that are halfway through a degree and showing them what a career could look like working for one of the big end of town builders. And I'll never forget a particular interview. I must have only been 20 years old, and someone pulled out this huge sheet that had a organisation diagram on it with probably about 200 people, a big pyramid, and basically said, here you are, you could come in and start right here down the bottom. And if you work really hard, by the time you're about 35, you might be a project manager up the top here. And that absolutely terrified me. And I said no to the job opportunity and got back to working with the small little backyard entrepreneur builders that I'd been doing some part-time work with. So I interestingly always sort of gravitated away from that big corporate model and found myself working with much smaller, very innovative entrepreneurs, and that probably got me down the track of understanding what business is about, as well as construction, and reporting to the people who own the businesses and understanding the risks and the real pain points of the industry. I think really shaped what that first stage of my career showed me.
I guess you're exposed to a lot, and that way you can make a real difference. I think if you're coming in at the bottom of a massive pyramid of people, you're going to be slotted into this is the thing that you're going to do, and don't go outside of that because you're going to tread on toes. Whereas if you're very close to the people, and there's a small team, you're going to make a real difference, and you're going to be exposed to a lot of how the business runs.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think as well, one of the big challenges that I'm sure we'll touch on in this construction industry is just that old-fashioned culture of this is how we do things here. We've always done it this way. This is what works. This is how I got taught. And I think in those huge organizations, that is a big challenge to overcome that culture. But the very way they're set up, it just replicates and facilitates that culture getting passed on to those younger generations, because when you do come as an impressionable young professional into that sort of a culture and a big group, you very much have to conform and follow procedures and do what the superior people tell you. And so by the time, and I've seen it too, you see these 20-something-year-olds, by the time they're about 30, which is still very young, they're actually saying and speaking and acting like the 55-year-old old-fashioned construction dinosaur that taught them how to build. So you got to break the mold to really disrupt the industry, which is well overdue for it.
Yeah, certainly. I'd love to explore that a bit more. The industry is overdue for it. There's obviously been some level of change between, I guess, when you started and now. Maybe we could talk about that also, what has changed in between that time. But also, what do you think hasn't changed and still needs to change?
Yeah, so I think some of the things that have changed would be just the very entry-level digitizing paper. And it sounds quite outrageous that we could sit here in 2024 and talk about that as some of the big breakthroughs, but that was where the industry was at when I started, and one of those early roles would have been a thing called document control, where you literally have huge reams of paper and files, and it's a full-time job for people to try and keep track of what the most up-to-date drawing is and what the correspondence register looks like. And obviously around about that time is when we all saw the success story of Aconex come in and take the industry by storm, and probably certainly for all the Australian construction tech businesses, pave the way that there's a big opportunity out there. But really, when you think about it, what they did was absolutely that very first baby step, where they just recognized that all this paper isn't the way forward, setting up a digital register and streamlining that. And unfortunately, I don't think the industry has gone too much further yet. It's just very slow to move. And so some of the other things that I have certainly seen big growth in is probably just that next step, which is the design coordination. It's widely accepted that using BIM files and 3D modeling as early as possible makes huge sense, and I know that's where you guys have come from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's interesting though is we're still seeing a challenge getting that level of control and organization in the digital model to be highly relevant during the delivery phase of construction.
On site. Yeah.
Some of the classic experiences I've had have been attending a site meeting and having a site team say, we've got this amazing federated BIM file, all the planning and class detection's been done. We pay $10,000 a month for consultants to manage it for us. It's all up to date. We just can't put it up here because the thing takes 20 minutes to load, and we're just going to have a quick 15-minute meeting. But trust me, it's a good system. You just won't get to see it. So just some of the tech advancements of making it user-friendly and quick and able to become relevant in that construction space, I think has been the recent growth that's really exciting to see.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, touching on some of the stuff that really hasn't changed, I can't help but chuckle when we're talking to people about what we do, and still getting that response that they've got a cadet that does that. He's got a clipboard. He goes and records that status a couple of times a day, or takes a few photos. So it's that data collection piece, and this idea that that the scarce small human resource teams that these construction sites have actually can't do anything better than capturing a bit of data that's out there that tech can help with.
We got a guy down the bottom of the pyramid that's going to walk around for us.
That's right.
Yeah, you've been that cadet, and then you said, "No, I don't want to go this way through the pyramid." You drew a circle around. I'm going to be CEO instead. But what challenges did you face along that journey? Because you've taken the road kind of less traveled to get where you are, I guess. How have you gone about it?
Yeah, well, I suppose like I mentioned, gravitated towards some of those smaller entrepreneurial opportunities that came along, and that saw me working for a high net worth individual that was doing a very large, challenging, complex development. And I learned a huge amount from that gentleman. And then I got to that point where my next step was a bit of travel, a bit of adventure, and I wanted to put myself somewhere in the world where construction was booming the most. And at the time, it was a coin flip between Macau and the Middle East. And so I went with the Middle East and moved over to Dubai and spent 5 years in Dubai working on the big mega infrastructure projects, the metro, the airport, and the new Doha airport. And so, again, in that chapter, I was working with a relatively small Australian subcontractor, a facade engineer, and subcontracting to those huge JV builder groups that were delivering those massive projects. But during that 5-year period, reporting to the person who owned the business, who had all the skin in the game, and certainly understood the risks and opportunities of being a business manager and an owner. So I definitely ignited a fire, I think, within that was probably always there, that entrepreneurial spirit. And in 2012, came back to Australia. And it was really through just thinking I probably needed to balance out my CV a bit better that I decided to sign up with one of the bigger builders in Australia and do some work with them. And that was really what set me on the path of taking a big sideways step and getting into construction technology. After spending 5 years in that corporate builder, I just realized that there was huge opportunity to be part of the change and contribute towards what I could see is going to eventually make that space very different and a much better construction industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like so many of the best tools are kind of born from the experience of seeing we can do better, or of understanding we can actually do this better, guys. But it doesn't happen overnight, does it? Like you've had that thought, and then obviously there's challenges even to get from that thought till now. How'd you go about that?
Yeah, so I think one of the big challenges is obviously it's a very scary step when you are considering resigning from a large, secure job from a very large developer in a career that makes a lot of sense, that has opportunities to grow into it. And so for me, that was probably one of the biggest decisions to think through. And obviously, because it wasn't like I started a tech startup when I was, still living at home and had a garage to work out of and a mum and dad still putting a meal on the table every night. So I took that leap with a family, a wife and 3 kids. And so I certainly needed to align myself with a few people that shared in that vision. And fortunately, I found those people, and we kind of came together to give it a shot, which involved some seed funding and some other strategic partners. And that's when BuildAI was able to get born in 2019.
Yeah, and been going great guns since then. So, what are you most proud of in your working career to date? What is it a project that stands out, or is it this, being able to get this idea and kind of bring it to reality? What are you proud of?
Yeah, look, I'd say the proudest moments would have to be when we're getting validation from completely independent operators or service providers that are very well respected, have a very large presence and a lot of experience in this huge industry, and they don't have any direct connections to our business. They've taken us at face value and understood what we're offering and how we can help, and have actually acknowledged that they think there is a really big market for this, and they want to use it and be a customer. So that's probably when you really start to feel like you're onto something, and it's worth forging ahead. And the sleepless nights and the roller coaster ride is eventually going to make a difference.
Chewing on glass for so long, then you really need a win. When you get the win, it's good, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And yeah, any particular like actual construction project that you've been associated with yourself, or that kind of your equipment has been used on, that you think, oh, that's cool that we were a part of that one?
Yeah, look, I'd say probably one that comes to mind from our local market here in Australia is the reconstruction of Randwick Children's Hospital. That was done by one of Australia's largest builders, and when that job opportunity first came along, I thought it was close to the heart, because I grew up in the area and we had our first child in that same hospital, and so it brought back some great memories. And also, obviously, being part of redeveloping a new children's hospital, but with some distinct innovation to make that process safer and more efficient, was a pretty special moment. And this particular builder used our system, and after about 3 months or so, we started meeting and delivering reports and identifying where they had some opportunity to unlock some efficiency. And it was just great to actually get that site team excited and on how they could actually save a bit of money, save a bit of time, do things better. And quite quickly after having those meetings, we were getting some calls from head office to come in and report on what we were doing there at that site, which was obviously filtering up through the ranks and getting some good publicity internally. So that was really great.
Yeah, that's really cool, Kristian. Like, we have, as a kid, you want to be this builder and maker, but you ultimately, when you come out of uni, you're doing this for the greater good of maybe society. There's a building going to go up, it's going to benefit society. And then when you can drive around with your kids in the car and you can point out buildings that you've worked on that helped make a change to the world, that's a real cool moment. But extending it even further, when you bring to life a new technology or a new way of doing things that's never been done before, and that's going to benefit society, that's a real moment that you can be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, we've traveled to many countries and many different markets around the world, and we hear a very common challenge or pain point that the industry is facing, which is this old-fashioned construction industry is really having trouble attracting skilled workers and attracting a diverse workforce, and getting that younger generation excited to actually be a builder. And it doesn't surprise me whatsoever, because you talk to the younger generations, the kids coming through school these days, about the idea of waking up at 5:30 every morning to drive out to a remote job site so that you're there at 7, and working half a day on Saturday, and it's not surprising that you're not getting a huge subscription rate from that younger generation. But what we actually see in the technology that we're all bringing to this industry is to actually reduce that requirement to be physically present on site 50 hours or more every week in order to efficiently run and manage these big projects. And so the other big thesis we have is that as construction tech becomes more adopted, we're actually going to unlock a whole new segment of the workforce that doesn't currently like the idea of building the old-fashioned way, but does like the idea of building the new way, and go a long way towards the challenges of finding skilled workers, which obviously allows the builders to get a lot more done, because globally there's a big undersupply. We can't seem to build affordable housing in any city, and it costs too much to build. So all these elements of productivity improvement and creating a bigger workforce have some big systemic issues that they're addressing, I think.
So thinking of those young people perhaps considering entering this industry in the workforce, what's one piece of advice you would give to them?
Look, I would say whatever you think you want to do in terms of how to contribute towards the construction, the built environment, don't be afraid if you've got a different idea of how to do things, or if you want that flexibility, because what the future looks like is a career in that industry that allows you to be working remotely, to be working flexibly. And there's more and more builders, I think, looking for people that do think outside of the box and are wanting to do things differently, which goes hand in hand with what that younger generation is going to bring to the industry.
Yeah, I like that. You're really problem solving at a root level.
Yeah, that's right. Don't feel that you have to sign up to the bottom piece of the pyramid if you want to join the industry. There's other ways to get into it.
We sometimes get pretty honest on this podcast, mate, and share our mistakes. So are there any mistakes that you would share, perhaps for others to avoid along their journey?
Look, I think we learned a huge amount in our first 2 years of BuildAI, and a lot of those mistakes, or lessons, as you like to call them, if you're wanting to be a bit more politically correct, I guess, are around just the brutal reality of being a startup. And I think the advice to my earlier self and in day one of being that startup would be, the quicker you can just create a situation to get raw, honest market feedback, the better. Because ultimately you're eventually going to be in the big bad world, and builders and developers are not going to be pulling any punches in terms of what they're looking for, what they're prepared to pay for, how much they're prepared to pay. And I think our mistake was probably having a bit more of a shielded introduction, because of where I came from. I came from a big builder developer, and so in those initial years we were somewhat cocooned in a bit of a bubble, and at the time it felt like that was making things easy. But I think the reality is you just want to really expose yourself to as many varied inputs, because all you're trying to do in those early stages is spend as small amount of money as you can to quickly find that product market fit.
You really got to validate your idea, and talking to as many people as possible. You got to sound it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do like your reference. Builders are not going to pay for something that doesn't provide value.
That's right. Yeah.
They're a pretty good customer base in that respect. You got to really have something of value. They don't like parting with money. Who does? I suppose. Mm.
I think, I mean, that's obviously the big challenge when they are a target customer is that you're talking to a group or a segment of the industry that is operating on the thinnest of margins that they've probably ever had to work with. And one of the challenges is obviously because the product and the services and the solutions are very innovative, many times people haven't heard of them before, and they certainly don't have a budget item for them. And so you've obviously got a challenging sales process to convince someone to spend some money on something they don't even have a budget for, on a project that would already have extremely tight margins, with the promise and the opportunity that you're going to make efficiency gains and deliver a significant ROI.
Yeah, it's a real conundrum that we find ourselves in, because it's an industry that's very traditional, and it involves a lot of people, or really maybe the better phrase is stakeholders that have got their own interests. It's not like everybody's working for the same company. There's all the subcontractors. So in that industry, which we know and everybody knows is broken, we've got to disrupt it. We've got to bring about innovation. We've got to bring about change. But it's traditional. So how do we... It's really hard. It's like, I'm going to bring in this new idea. It's a new way of doing a thing. It's innovative and it's going to disrupt. Well, we've never done it like that. Why do we want to do that? And so you've got to really convince either a whole project team or a whole group of stakeholders. It's like, okay, well, we're all going to take a punt on this. We're all going to go for it, and maybe we fail, but maybe we win. And but I think that's the only way change is going to come about. Yeah,
you're right. I think there's two strategies that we've adopted to try and deal with exactly that. And I guess the first one is you've got to try and give them something that's as close as possible to what they might already be used to, and may even potentially have some budget for. But just by taking the punt with yourselves, it's a baby step as opposed to a massive leap. And if you can find what that baby step looks like, and set up a project, a product for them which allows a baby step in price as well, then it's much easier to get that first baby step, but that then opens a door and a path, and it's all about taking them on that journey along the path towards the flag on the hill. But we certainly don't get anyone prepared just to take an almighty leap from where they are to the flag on the hill. So that's been one of our lessons along the way, which we're seeing improved success with. And then the other one, which is, I think, a very great realization, is you've got to follow the money and try and go further up the pyramid of that particular project, because if you're talking to the developer who may have already had to significantly drop a price to win a job, the construction planning, the design, the setup has already been set in stone or maybe concrete, then you've got a very tiny fragment to get in there and make a difference around. However, the earlier in that development cycle that you can become relevant and be relevant, the more opportunity you've got to influence and disrupt and set up a different culture and a different way of doing things. And that's probably an increasing focus for our business now, is just how can we position ourselves to be useful, helpful, and relevant in those really early stages, which will obviously translate to then getting a lot more opportunity once the actual site delivery is in progress.
That's cool. I mean, we found that ourselves, like working for subcontractors, you know that if you level up, kind of follow that money, like you're saying. Okay, well, if we work for the bigger team that's looking after them, we're going to benefit more people. And then you go, what about the owner, the developer, the client, the end client? If we're working for them, they're going to, that transparency or whatever it is, the value proposition is going to be multiplied.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well is it's whatever the ratio of influence. So if you're in the design stage or the planning stage, certain decisions you make about that project have a significant influence on how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. And so if you can unlock some of the insights that your product is all about, that your product is capturing, and make it relevant in that stage, there's opportunity for your customers to really make some big gains early, versus once you're all the way down and your design's all frozen and confirmed, the construction plan is all squared away, then you kind of, you're assisting to try and get that last 10%, versus you might unlock some big 20 and 30% gains in the early stages.
Yeah, that's true. And so what are you, I'm really curious, what are you excited about in the future? I know you're constantly thinking about how we can make improvements and what's going to benefit a construction site. But I'm sure you've got ideas about where this is going to go into the future. What can you share there?
Yeah, well, I think for us, the most basic fundamentals of what we do is all about saying, well, what on a day-to-day basis, what defines a healthy construction site? And my answer to that is that a healthy construction site is one where material is moving efficiently and labor is being productive. And any point in time, if you kind of just freeze and go in and grab all of the traditional managers and engineers and cadets that are running around on that site and get them to all give you feedback on how everything is going at that exact point in time, I guarantee the answers will be a range of, well, there's a delivery that's been delayed, or one of the tower cranes is broken, or it started to rain, so all the labor's gone off the lead deck. Everything to do with that daily productivity and daily production comes down to how well a material is moving and how productive labor is. And so what we've created with BuildAI is basically an autonomous way of measuring that health score from A, material, and B, labor productivity in real time at a very granular basis every half an hour. And what that data set does is actually unlocks everything that is further up the design chain and the planning chain, because all the big decisions that get made in design and in planning translate to how healthy that job site flows. So I think the thing that's really exciting for me is, as we start to see more adoption of our technology and get more and more builders understanding the opportunity of actually being able to automatically measure that sort of heart rate pulse every single day, we're going to get an even richer data set that is available to those customers for that design and planning phase. Because what we're already seeing with a few builders that have done 5 or more projects with us is they're calling us and bringing us in at the early stages of the next big job, and they're actually asking us to unlock the data that we've captured to show them from their own data set, how many cranes do we need, what sort of cranes should we be using, where should we be putting them, what kind of productivity can we expect to get, and therefore what should our target program look like. So I'm really excited about getting that earlier piece of the puzzle unlocked with our software solution to create a really relevant way of supporting and ultimately disrupting that early stage of construction planning and design?
Yeah, so you've pretty much answered this follow-on question that I had for you, which was, what does the builder look like in the future? And I think what you're saying is, I've got the heart rate monitor, but it's no good just knowing your heart rate. It's no good having this Apple Watch that's just monitoring. I've got to do something with that information. And the way a builder does that is by implementing what they learn straight away, either straight away or on the next job we're going to do, we're going to implement what we learned. And I think in the past, they haven't had those data points. It's kind of, I guess, run on gut feel, or it runs on like, oh, I think we could make this improvement just because the way I saw something working on site. But now we've got data that's going to make the real difference. But it's about implementing it, making the change that the data is suggesting we need to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think what's exciting is with the rapid development of AI that's happening at the moment is unlocking that opportunity to really leverage that huge and growing data set, so that when a builder is figuring out what the design should look like and what should their plan be, they're actually pulling levers that are going to ultimately dictate what material movement rates they achieve and what labor productivity they actually can realize. And so the bigger exciting opportunity is to actually unlock that forecast tool, so that when a builder is making a decision on a type of tower crane or a number of tower cranes, or should they put set downs on their balcony, that just added a month to my program, I'll delete the set downs. Now my end date's a month sooner. I think that's what the future looks like, where you're going to get builders and developers who get much better accuracy at forecasting time in the stages of deciding what the design looks like and what the construction plan looks like. Because we've got quite good historical data on cost, but the big area where it's suck it and see and a bit of a gamble is, how long is this thing going to take? And then as soon as it takes a month longer, that cost blowout far outweighs slightly more expensive cost of material.
That concept of data and also AI, so much kind of hype and buzzwords around it now. But what do you think construction data really means now moving forward?
Well, I think there's been a tsunami of digital capability that no one is going to stop, that relates to AI. And that's a good thing, because it's going to unlock lots of innovation and efficiency gain. But the fundamental limiting factor on what you can get out of various AI applications comes down to, what data have you got to put into the model? And so I think that's where our opportunity is squarely focused, is we can actually unlock and capture a very unique data set that's highly relevant and isn't easy to capture and isn't being captured at the moment by many people, if any. And whoever has that data set can then feed it into a variety of AI applications that are only going to be growing in their capability and effectiveness. And so where the sort of future competitive advantage comes from will be from those builders or companies that actually unlock and capture the most relevant and unique data sets to put into the AI model. And I think it's also a good way of sort of reminding the industry that with all of this technology that is coming, it's not like they're actually losing their in-house expertise, their in-house IP, or their kind of current competitive advantage, because these are all just tools that make good builders even better. And if they can actually unlock the data that their own team generates, but then feed it into these growingly sophisticated tools, then they've got a good future ahead.
Yeah, this is, and there's a bit of controversy around this. Like, how much of it is going to take away jobs? And I'm sure, you've got AI in your business name. You've probably had to be able to answer this question around, is it going to take away the jobs? Is it going to? I remember a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago, I think when ChatGPT came out, but there was this massive construction project going on, and the banner around it that the builder had put up was, "Hey, ChatGPT, build my building," or something like that, construct my project, alluding to the fact that ChatGPT can't do construction. But you're also leaning into this technology that is going towards that. Where does that leave the jobs?
Yeah, well, I think it sort of circles back to one of those big systemic challenges that we have chatted already about, which was, at the moment, the current model is broken. We're seeing developments not go ahead because the feasibility doesn't stack up. It just costs too much, or it's taking too long to make it possible. Any job that doesn't go ahead is actually a huge impact on the labour force, because it's X number of workers that are not going to be working on that project for the next 2 or 3 years. And really, at the end of the day, all this technology and even the AI-driven tech doesn't solve problems. And like that sign around the jump form says, it doesn't physically build anything. It just improves the data aggregation and analysis to make the people who are planning and running the jobs able to make better decisions. We don't have enough people in the industry already, and so if we make their jobs easier and we make them more effective at what they're doing, well, that's only a good thing, because there's currently not enough people to go around. So that'll assist in allowing more jobs to happen. It'll also attract more people to join that industry. And for all of the workers out there, we're not about to start building with robots. We're just going to start getting jobs that are better run, better organized, safer, more efficient, and that'll ultimately encourage developers to do more projects, which I would argue is going to grow the potential industry for labor workers. So it's a bit of a circular challenge, but there's definitely a perception that AI is going to take a job.
Yeah, that's you put that really well, and especially when we're talking about things like housing.
Yeah,
we need it. We actually need to solve this problem, and we need tools that are going to improve the way we're doing things. That's simply it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if you look at any large city, and I know Sydney's an easy one to look at, and you just project the number of new houses or units every year that city needs in order to start bringing down the undersupply.
Mm-hmm.
And it is way out of range of what the current city and the builders and developers are set up to deliver. There's no chance of meeting that growing demand. And so there's a huge opportunity once the right builder and developers really do start disrupting that model and leveraging the technology that's available to actually grab a huge amount of market share in being part of the solution of delivering a lot of those new housing requirements for these bigger cities.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're going to get into this quickfire round, Kristian. This is we've got a few, somewhat silly questions, but as we begin to wrap up, thank you so much for your time. But this quickfire round, we've got a very important question. It's hammer, screwdriver, or duct tape, and I think the duct tape represents maybe a quick fix. The hammer is more of a permanent fix, and the screwdriver is a bit of a finesse about it. What tool would you gravitate towards?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'm a screwdriver kind of person, where I like to fix and adjust things without necessarily breaking them too badly.
Yeah.
But I definitely like it to be a bit more permanent than what you can achieve with duct tape.
Yeah, might be a quick fix, but we did something more.
Yeah.
And then onto a material question. We've got concrete, steel, or timber. What guy are you?
Concrete.
Oh,
I love a good bit of concrete structure.
Yeah.
The last guy we had on said the same, and he said it's liquid rock. So it's pretty cool.
You might have a biased answer to this, actually. This question is, what's your favorite bit of hardware tech that you've seen on site recently?
Probably
the thing sitting on a crane, right?
own. Yeah, I'll pick something different, but
Or even a category, maybe. That might make it easier. A category of tech that's coming out.
yeah, look, I think, and this is a controversial answer, so let's go with it. I like the fact that we're starting to see in Australia turnstiles that at the sort of entrance points of job sites that do have facial recognition capability, because at the end of the day, they're not trying to steal anyone's identity, but they're just an extremely efficient way of capturing a record of who is inside the site or outside the site at any point in time, and from a safety perspective, and also from an understanding from each trade group, how many numbers are here. It's fantastic data. It's extremely efficient. You can tell if someone's had an induction or not, and it's the way forward. So I think it's great to see, even in Australia, which I would argue is a little slow on the uptake of some of the construction tech options that are out there. I'm loving the examples where you see a site that's got facial recognition automatically ticking people off as they come and go.
There you go. That's cool. That's an interesting answer. Kristian, I want to thank you so much for your time with us this morning. We've covered a lot of subjects, and we've talked about a lot. Tried to cover some tricky ones, solve some hard problems. But it's been really awesome to talk to you and just hear your journey and what you're up to now. So thank you so much.
It's been great chatting. Thanks, Michael. And thanks, Luke. Wonderful catching up and having a good chat. Thanks for having me.